Good Tuesday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for August the 8th. Today we are reading together in 2 Samuel chapter 2. We remember from the past couple of days of readings that that Saul has died at the end of 1 Samuel. And then the first chapter of 2 Samuel tells us of David learning of Saul's demise and his response to that. But there's a very practical issue that arises now with the death of Saul, and that is who is going to lead Israel. Well, chapter 2 of 2 Samuel is going to give us a bit of detail as to who steps in to fill the leadership vacuum that has been created with the death of Saul. So let's read together here in 2 Samuel chapter 2, beginning in verse number 1. 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse number 1, sometime later, so not given an exact amount of time later, but sometime later, David inquired of Yahweh, should I go to one of the towns of Judah? And Yahweh answered him, go. Then David asked, where should I go? To Hebron. Yahweh replied. So David went there with his two wives, Ahinoam, the Jezreelite, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. In addition, David brought the men who were with him, each one with his family, and they settled in the towns near Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. They told David it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul. David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said to them, Yahweh bless you because you have shown this kindness to Saul, your Lord, when you buried him. Now may Yahweh show kindness and faithfulness to you. And I will also show the same kindness to you because you have done this deed. Therefore be strong and valiant, for though Saul, your Lord, is dead, the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. Abner, son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, took Saul's son Ishbosheth and moved him to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, Asher, Jezreel, Ephraim, and Benjamin over all Israel. Saul's son Ishbosheth was 40 years old when he became king over Israel. He reigned for 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David. The length of time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Abner, son of Ner, and soldiers of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, marched out of Mahanaim to Gibeon. So Joab, son of Zeruiah, and David's soldiers marched out and met them by the pool of Gibeon. The two groups took up positions on opposite sides of the pool. Then Abner said to Joab, let's have the young men get up and compete in front of us. Let them get up, Joab replied. So they got up and were counted off, 12 men for Benjamin and Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 from David's soldiers. Then each man grabbed his opponent by the head and thrust his sword into his opponent's side so that they all died together. So this place, which is in Gibeon, is named the Field of Blades. The battle that day was extremely fierce, and Abner and the men of Israel were defeated by David's soldiers. The three sons of Zeruiah were there. They were Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Asahel was a fast runner, like one of the wild gazelles. He chased Abner and did not turn to the right or left in pursuit of him. Abner glanced back and said, is that you, Asahel? Yes, it is, Asahel replied. Abner said to him, turn to your right or left, seize one of the young soldiers, and take whatever you can get from him. But Asahel would not stop chasing him. Once again, Abner warned Asahel, stop chasing me. Why should I strike you to the ground? How could I ever look your brother Joab in the face? But Asahel refused to turn away. So Abner hit him in the stomach with the butt of his spear. The spear went through his body, and he fell and died there. As they all came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died, they stopped. But Joab and Abishai pursued Abner. By sunset, they had gone as far as the hill of Ammah, which is opposite Giah, on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon. The Benjaminites rallied to Abner. They formed a unit and took their stand on top of a hill. Then Abner called out to Joab, must the sword devour forever? Don't you realize this will only end in bitterness? How long before you tell the troops to stop pursuing their brothers? As God lives, Joab replied, if you had not spoken up, the troops wouldn't have stopped pursuing their brothers until morning. Then Joab blew the ram's horn, and all the troops stopped. They no longer pursued Israel or continued to fight. So Abner and his men marched through the Arabah all that night. They crossed the Jordan, marched all morning, and then arrived at Mahanaim, excuse me. Then Joab, when Joab had turned back from pursuing Abner, he gathered all the troops. In addition to Asahel, 19 of David's soldiers were missing, but they had killed 360 of the Benjaminites and Abner's men. Afterward, they carried Asahel to his father's tomb in Bethlehem and buried him. Then Joab and his men marched all night and reached Hebron at dawn. And that is 2 Samuel chapter 2. Again, there's a leadership vacuum now, and David asks Yahweh what he should do. Remember, David's been out of Judah for quite some time. He's been outside of the land of Israel. He's been living among Philistine territory. So he asked Yahweh, I think a good move here, a good question to ask. This is a good first step. Should I go back? And Yahweh says, yes, you should go back. Where should I go back? He says to Hebron. This ends up being the capital city of David, and it begins a 7.5 year reign for David while being king in Hebron. We can find that in verse number 11. David goes with everybody within his family, all of his family, and the family of his followers. And the text says that the men of Judah, they came and they anointed David king over the house of Judah. So they recognize, it seems, I don't know if this was something that was completely public knowledge that David was the anointed king of Israel. Possibly it was. And with that being the case, it made sense for them to go ahead and to anoint him as king in this position. Which, saying that, I want to skip ahead real fast. So verse number 8, we have Abner, who is Saul's relative, who, if this is public knowledge, David's supposed to be king, he's not going to let that be the case. Instead, he's going to take one of Saul's sons, Ishbosheth, and basically establish him as a puppet king. I think Abner is really the one who sees himself as being the person in the greatest position of power, but because he's not technically the next in line because of this son of Saul, then he can't exactly assume the throne. So he has to put in this person that he can control and manipulate in the way that he wants to. So that's what we're going to see in verses 8 through 11. You basically have these two different kings that are set up over Israel, over different parts of Israel. That Ishbosheth is the leader of Israel over most of the northern portion of the land, whereas David is in the southern portion of the land. Let me actually pull up a map. There's a good map that I saw earlier in my Bible that I'll share with you that shows the territory here and what exactly is going on within this text. Let me see here. There it is. All right, so let me make this bigger and share. There we go. Hopefully that's showing up decently well on your screen. You have the entirety of Israel here, the entire land of Canaan. Up here is Mahanaim, where Abner establishes Ishbosheth as king, and it is basically his capital city. And then on here is Hebron. This is the land of Judah, and you can basically see the green area. The greenish area is David's territory. The land up here, the orangish area, is the territory of Ishbosheth. The great battle that we just read about is going to take place right here. Remember, David has been living down in this area. This is where David had been with his men, again, outside the land of Judah. Now they have moved over here to Hebron, and you see this route that he takes in to go up here to fight outside of Gibeon and elsewhere. Let's see here. So we're outside they went up, they mount to Gibeon right here in this particular area. So you have these two kings, again, David in this area, Ishbosheth in this area, but really probably Abner is the one who's pulling the strings in this. You know, I'll also want to note the detail that's given where David is told that those who live in Jabesh Gilead right here, they're the ones who came and took care of Saul. So he actually sends messengers to them and commends them for what they've done and extends blessings upon them, not only for himself, but also hopes that God will bless them for their kindness to Saul. Again, just showing David's proper mindset toward the former king of Israel. But again, we have this map that shows the different areas. The orange area is quite a bigger area, probably double the size of what we have down here in Judah, in Israel's rule. But what we also have is really the difference in the two kings and the two rules. David's name means beloved, whereas Ishbosheth, his name actually means man of shame. And what we're told in First Chronicles, and his name's actually Ishbaal, which is, not good, although the Hebrew word Baal just means owner, or it's another word for Lord, although it is often used in a pagan way. So it could be that Saul, again, my thoughts on Saul and his spirituality, could have named his son in honor of the pagan god, or he could have just named him as being the son of a Lord. Whatever it might be, we have here the beloved's territory, whereas we have here the shameful territory, and that's really going to set up the rest of the story between these two kings as they oppose one another. We're told that David reigned 7.5 years, whereas Ishbosheth only reigned for 2 years. At what point that overlapped, we're not really sure, but there certainly was overlap, because we see their two forces fighting against one another. Here at Gibeon, you have Abner and his soldiers go out, and they face against Joab, who is David's nephew. He goes out with his soldiers. They meet at this pool, at the side of this pool in Gibeon, and they first send out 12 men from each side in order to fight, maybe just to see if there's a victor here, then that's the winner. But they end up coming up in a tie, which is just quite fascinating thing about that they actually end up tying. So they end up going into a very intense, very fierce battle in beginning of verse 17. And yet there was a clear victor here in the fact that David's forces defeated Abner's forces. One of his other nephews, Asahel, is described as being a really fast runner. He runs like a wild gazelle, and he takes off after Abner. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? I guess it just depends on how you read it. Some might say that this was him chasing glory for himself, taking out the opposition's leader, or this could be him recognizing this will cause this battle to end faster than anything else if they could take out the leader. So as Asahel is pursuing Abner, you have really experience versus youthful energy. More than likely, you have that's the play that's put on here. And Abner says, "Listen, you need to stop pursuing me. Go after somebody else, but don't pursue me." Asahel doesn't listen. He continues to pursue Abner. Abner says, "Listen, I really don't want to do this. I don't know how I'm going to be able to look Joab in the face if I kill his brother." Again, Asahel doesn't listen. So if we're thinking in our minds, how does this happen? It could be that as Asahel is closing in on Abner, that he's running so fast to maybe tackle Abner, that he just sticks his spear backwards and runs it straight through Asahel. Maybe that's what happens. Maybe Abner wasn't really trying to kill Asahel. Maybe he was just trying to knock the breath out of him. Maybe just the speed of Asahel ends up causing this to happen. Whatever the case is, Abner kills Asahel. And that leads the rest of the forces that are on Asahel's side to continue their pursuit of Abner. So they're pursuing them away. We can probably assume they're pursuing them away back towards Mahanaim. And the Benjamites end up rallying together. It's said in verse 25 that the Benjamites rallied to Abner. They formed a unit and took their stand on top of the hill. So this is it. It's our final stand. But Abner calls to Joab and says, "Must the sword devour forever? Don't you realize this will only end in bitterness? How long before you tell the troops to stop pursuing their brothers? Really, this is just the high price of civil war. Can't we just get along?" Abner says. And Joab goes along with it. Yeah, you're kind of making sense. Yeah, sure, we'll call it a truce for now. My question is, was this the right thing? Was this the right move by Joab? I don't know if there's any definitive answer that we can give based in the text, but just recognizing that because he stops here, we have verse number 1 of chapter 3, that during the long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, during this long civil war, I wonder if this was the right move from Joab. Because we read later on that, yes, there were 20 of David's soldiers that were killed, but there were 360 of Abner's soldiers that were killed. It seems to me that they maybe could have finished the forces of Ishbosheth / Abner off here. They could have ended this really before this civil war before really even started. Would that have been the better move? I really don't know. I don't know. You think about the story of Judah, civil war, or excuse me, the story of the judges, the last 3 chapters of that text. That was a civil war that happened as well. And you think about that text, and they were about to wipe out the Benjaminites altogether, but then they realize, oh no, we shouldn't do this, and they have to go through the whole thing about finding the wives. So maybe that's something that's going on in the background of the story as well. An echo from that the Benjaminites are right there, ready to be destroyed again, but then they hold off. So I'm not really sure. Maybe you have some thoughts about what should have happened here within this text. But what we do know is what ends up being the outcome. That civil war continues to be waged between the house of Saul and the house of David, that David's house continues to grow stronger. Saul's house grows weaker. And we will end up seeing what takes place in chapter 3 as that continues to progress. What ends up being the outcome of the story here in this struggle between this divided land. Again, the southern land that was David's territory and the northern land that was the territory of Ishbosheth / Abner. So we'll check that out in our read tomorrow. Tomorrow we're actually going to read together chapters 3 and 4. So looking forward to reading that together with you then. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, everyone. May God bless you in all that you do. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave that below. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, reading 2 Samuel chapters 3 and 4. Take care. God bless.